It is now August, and summer, of course, has been upon us and is still fully upon us, which means you guys are out there catching lots and lots of fish. The problem is you might be catching lots of quantity with very little quality. So today we are going to actually talk about catching a little better than average fish, but this time of year it can be tough because fish are spread out in just about any location, any cover type, any type of water, and for that reason I call this time of year the summer spread. It seems like you can catch fish in just about anything. So where are the big ones? Today we are going to talk about 5 areas or 5 things that I look for on any river when I am targeting bigger than average smallmouth, so come along. Before we get into things, I do just want to establish a baseline concept when it comes to bass fishing, and that is we are always looking for changes. This could be a change in the bottom composition. This could be a change in the type of grass that's present in a lake. This could be a change in the shoreline along a river. Any of these changes are going to be places we want to look for to target bass. And in this example here, I targeted an area where the cover along the bank changes and there is an overhanging tree. These are going to be factors that set this area apart from the others around it. One of the first things I want to see out on a new stretch of river looking for big smallmouth is isolated cover types. And what I mean by that is a specific example of cover that is removed from other examples of that same kind of cover. So in this area here, I want you guys to look for that. But here, let me get this branch out of your face so you can have a better view. All right, I'm sure most of you picked up on this big ass lonely rock chilling by itself, no friends at all. This is going to be something that I'm looking for when I want to find that one big fish hanging around. After one cast, we got no takers, but are we really going to leave this rock without making multiple presentations? I don't know. Let's see. This one's not even 20. It's like a 19 and a half, 19.75. So heavy. It should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Whenever you have something like this, you need to make multiple casts around it, different sides, top, bottom, hit everything, because you never know where that one fish is going to be set up. And while isolated rocks like this certainly are something you want to fish, you don't want to ignore those other big boulders that have lots of friends around them, because if there's one constant in this world, it is that smallmouth bass love big ass rocks. And after this fish, not only is it clear that big smallmouth love big ass rocks, but I also think they like mag drafts, and I can feel myself becoming a big swim bait guy. Okay, anyway, moving on, we are on the Mississippi. We're in a totally different section of river. I have an isolated piece of cover up ahead of me, but I want you guys to try to zero in on what that is. I will say that this one is much more subtle, but let's go ahead and see if anything is living in it. Oh my God! How? I know you guys can't see beneath the surface, but that is what I am here for. I can tell you that all of the water around this riffle was much deeper, and this was an isolated hump out in the middle of a really wide turn that did have some shallow water way up ahead and way down below, but in the immediate vicinity, this spot was totally isolated from other examples of shallow, rocky riffles. And that's really the key when it comes to looking for isolated cover. We just want to find something that sticks out like a sore thumb, something that doesn't belong, the black sheep of an area, because for whatever reason, big smallmouth love that stuff. And just because visible cover is definitely the easiest to identify, don't ignore what's going on beneath the surface. If we have a change in the bottom composition, or a change in the type of grass that is present, or an area with no grass all of a sudden having some grass, these are areas we want to look at. Broke me off. Nope. Giant smallmouth. God damn it. In this example here, we had an isolated grass patch that was just behind a little cut through at the top of an island. So by definition, that cut through is isolated, but that grass patch was also isolated because in the immediate vicinity, there was no other grass like it. And yes, you're going to see me losing some fish today because that's just how it goes. But also, I was fishing a tournament, so I always seem to lose the important big ones when I need them. If you've spent any amount of time out on the river fishing, you might have asked yourself, when should I be fishing the shore and when should I be fishing the center channel out in the middle of the river? Well, my answer to that question is basically I try to fish the middle when I've identified some sort of subtle depth change or some sort of change in the bottom composition or even a change in the strength of the current.
Got to be kidding me. That was a big one.
Yes, you can go ahead and tally yet another lost tournament fish, but this guy was hanging out in an area that just got a little bit deeper after a concentration of rock out in the center channel. And we've got the same exact setup here, just on a different river, so I want you guys to try to figure out where you would be casting right now. This quality Wisconsin smallmouth is another example of why we need to be looking for subtle changes that you otherwise might be floating over in the summer going down the river. Some of you may be wondering why I have a graph on a kayak if I'm fishing shallow, skinny rivers. Well, the answer to that question is I want to see the contours of the bottom and I want to look for areas like this. This is actually a little trough that the current has worn down. If you pay attention to my screen here, you can see it. It's going to start to come up as I get closer to the bank. And in my experience, quality smallmouth like to hang around these subtle changes in the river. Although they may not be in the trough or the deeper part, they tend to be in the adjacent areas or at least pretty close by. As I'm fishing this spot, I do just want to point out that this feature was not present on the other side of the river, and for that reason, I focused my efforts on this left side. And now that you've seen what may go down in the history books as the worst boat flip of all time, let's talk about what we can do to try to identify these changes. If we just simply pay attention to what's going on the bank, sometimes that's an indicator of what's going on beneath the surface. So here we have a natural rock point, and Dan is going to demonstrate that because that point comes pretty far out, it's most likely shallow and fish could be hanging out there in the middle of the river where you otherwise might think it would be deep. But the reality is that the bank can only tell you so much, and you're just going to have to get out there and learn your river. This spot specifically is such a subtle little trough here that it took me a couple times floating over it to actually see what was going on. There's just a little bit of deeper water alongside these rocks up ahead of me with shallower water on both sides. So in that little trough, the fish really like to hang out, especially because there were some pretty large boulders for them to hang around.
Oh, not my swim bait. Oh.
Quickly, before I blow your mind with my expert casting abilities, let's go ahead and define what an undercut bank is. This is just a bank that the current has worn down beneath the surface of the water, and the bank of the river actually hangs out a little bit further over the river than what's beneath it. And this gives the fish a little bit of a current break, but it also gives them a very good ambush location. There are a couple key characteristics of cut banks that tend to attract bigger fish in my experience, and the first one is going to be the proximity to current. You can see that this past fish was definitely in an area that had some faster water, but if we look at the grass bank itself, we're going to see indentations or cutouts in it that's going to allow the fish to get out of the current and hunt from a location that isn't going to require such a high level of energy. Of course, my big head was in the way, but if you look closely, where this fish ate is also the biggest indentation along this grassy bank. Alright y'all, have I redeemed myself with this grab? Here you're going to see me working up a bank that caught my eye because it has a little bit more depth than the area around it, 3 to 4 feet, all along that cut bank. Plenty of indentations with a few overhanging branches as well, and this just screams fishy to me, so I always slow down and fish these thoroughly. Usually I make a little better casts, but that's just how it goes some days. Let's take just a moment right here to look at the shape of the bank and how it changes as it gets closer to me. This fish ate right where it cuts further into the right, creating that nice little pocket, and for that reason you want to fish these thoroughly.
Nope. Oh yeah. No, it's not. Gosh.
Normally when I hear my drag screaming like this along a cut bank, I am a happy camper, but I was fishing a tournament and this fish isn't the species that I was after, unfortunately. Alright, while I take a burrito break, you guys are going to go ahead and take a quiz. It should come as no surprise that I lost a fish up at the top of this island here, but what I want you guys to do is decide where you would make one cast if you could only make one at the top of this island that has some pretty nice looking cut bank. So take a look and make a decision. I know you guys are working with limited information, but which of these three options is the highest probability area to catch a nice smallmouth? And because I'm still working on my burrito, I'm going to call in a friend to reveal the answer.
The things C is for cookie, that's good enough for me.
That's right, this fish was hanging out in option C underneath that overhanging branch, and also coincidentally the deepest, darkest pocket. This water was a little bit deeper right there. There was a nice one hanging out. I just couldn't manage to get him in the kayak. Alright, what you guys are seeing here is a heck of a lot of water moving pretty quickly down through an area that's going to be split by an island, which is going to even further concentrate all of this water moving down through it. Anytime I come across an area like this, I am always looking for those initial slower water pockets that are up towards the top of that faster water. And I also want to look in the areas immediately downstream of this concentration of current, because those first examples of reduced flow areas tend to be really good spots to capitalize and catch some big bass.
belly flap. So in the summertime, when I find a concentration of a lot of water, meaning that the flow is higher, the current is stronger, I like to go downstream of that, and I like to find that first slower area, preferably with some cover, some rock cover, with some grass, whatever it may be, something that's breaking the current a little bit. But overall, the fish like to hang out in that first slower area. It's not slack. It may not be moving super slow, but it is a little bit slower relative to the rest of the water around it that's being concentrated by whatever it may be. In this case, it's an island that's pushing water on each side, and it's really being concentrated into a certain area by rocks. So we found the first slower area downstream, and I was casting behind some current breaks, found another good fish.
This here is a good example of the first slower reduced flow area right beneath a stronger riffle that is actually much stronger out to my right. But one thing I want to draw your attention to here is the fact that it has water still running into it. If there's an area like this that is stagnant, I really don't want to spend much time on it. But because this has a couple different inflows oxygenating the water, there is plenty of opportunity for life to be here. And that means smallmouth are more likely to be in this area hunting. One thing to keep in mind when we are looking for these reduced flow areas is that it doesn't always matter what time of the day it is. Just because it is the middle of the day does not mean that a fish is going to be out in the fastest water. In fact, there is no real rule. We don't know where the fish are going to be, so we do have to check. But this fish is a good example of just finding a very, very shallow shaded area in the middle of the day and doing your best.
Giant. There we go. That's a nice 20. That's the size I've been looking for.
In these next couple clips here, I just really want to show you the kind of habitat that I mean when I'm talking a reduced flow area. It does not always look the same. It's going to be a little bit different on every river. The cover type within those areas is always going to be different, but for the most part, they look like this. And while I do generally stand by the fact that there are not many hard and fast rules in fishing, one theory that I have is that the bigger fish like to be closer to faster water or heavier current in areas that are actually harder to fish. I'm not going to try to explain why. These are just my findings. The last area that we're going to focus on today is going to be laydowns, and I'm also going to classify laydowns as overhanging trees, so I'm going to use the term, but it means both of those things to me. And one thing I just want to point out quickly is when you're fishing laydowns, you have to put the bait in places where you're a little bit afraid of losing it.
Decent. Buddy, come on in here. Nice area with depth and current.
And that's really what I'm looking for most of the time. If I can find some pockets of depth, either behind or in front of a laydown, and I have some current around it, I know I have a pretty good shot at catching a nice smallmouth. If you've got a keen eye, you've noticed that of course we have the laydown, we have some shade, we have a little bit of current moving under it. There is some depth here, even though I know you guys can't see that, but there's also grass back behind that. And this is an area where not only smallies are wanting to live, this is going to be an area where fish like this hang out too.
Alright. A little musky. It's the wrong kind of shade dweller.
Another factor that comes to mind when I'm looking for productive laydowns is how far out does the tree come into the channel and how big is the tree itself. Is it enough to block quite a bit of the current and form a nice break, or is it blocking it in just one primary location? These factors are going to tell me where to concentrate my efforts when it comes to putting my bait in the right location. And as we move deeper and deeper into summer and eventually fall, we are going to see grassy rivers start to give up a lot of that grass, and that grass, specifically a grass like eelgrass, is going to start to accumulate on the front side of laydowns like this or other structures that are allowing it to accumulate in one spot. When I'm approaching a laydown like this that has a grass mat at the top, I like hitting it from the upstream side, ideally power pulling down and facing it, but in this case I was working upstream, so I wanted to cast into an area with a little bit slower water. I wanted it to drift underneath the laydown, but I was bringing it out a little bit closer to the channel as well while I was giving it time to get sufficiently under the mat. This footage was also from tournament day, so this is yet another lost tournament fish. I don't know what the tally is at this point, but it is disappointing. So let's go ahead and move on to the next laydown. This is going to be an example of one that is just a little bit different from the others. It's very big. It comes out into the channel quite a ways, but there is a feature on the back side of it up against the bank that kind of sets it apart. There's this nice little channel of moving water down towards the base of the tree.
Whew, needed that one, but had 3 more. That is so frustrating.
All right, so I at least found a little bit of tournament redemption there, and while I am sitting here reflecting upon my poor choices, I want you guys just to look at what's going on with this laydown. Obviously, we have that overhanging stuff. We have that's going to make the fish feel a little more protected. We have overhanging grass, and then we have a good amount of current coming down along the bank, and it is a little bit deeper right there. This is a nice little spot for a smallmouth to set up without expending a lot of energy, having a little bit of protection on all sides so they can feel comfortable as they wait for me to come by and throw a whopper plopper right on top of their head.
Oh.
Did you really think I was going to give you guys a happy ending? I had to leave you with one more loss, but hopefully you noticed one thing, and that is that I made 4 casts at this one laydown. I put it in a little bit different spot each time, and that fish did not eat until I put that Senko exactly where it wanted it, and this is one lesson to take away from fishing laydowns. Sometimes you have to find those sweet spots, and then you can rinse and repeat, but the fish aren't always going to come a mile to eat your bait. You are not that special. But you are very special to me if you made it to the end of this video. That means you have a long attention span, longer than average at least, and I sincerely appreciate that. And it also means that you are watching my videos until the end. If you did that, let me know in the comments. If you didn't, you're not hearing this, so go on, continue doing whatever you want to do. But hopefully you can get something out of this video. Hopefully it helps you get on a bigger smallmouth this summer. See you guys next time.